I spent years watching others succeed with their startups, convinced that without knowing how to code, I was doomed to stay on the sidelines. What I discovered in 7 days changed everything. I saw software ideas everywhere, small daily problems that could be solved by a simple application. But between the idea and reality, there was this insurmountable wall: code. I felt like an architect who could envision cathedrals but couldn't lay a single brick. This frustration was my driving force for years. And then, one evening, while mindlessly scrolling, I stumbled upon a conversation about no-code tools and new artificial intelligence APIs. A spark ignited. What if? What if code was no longer an obligation, but an option? A wild, almost arrogant idea took root. What if I took on the challenge of building a real SaaS, a functional piece of software, in just 1 week, starting from scratch, without writing a single line of code? This is the story of that week, which completely changed my view of creation. In this video, I won't give you a magic formula. I'm going to tell you, day by day, my journey, my doubts, my failures, and the precise method I followed to succeed. Make sure to stick around until the very end, because the 7th day holds the most important lesson of all. Chapter 1, Day 1, The Counterintuitive Idea. Everyone thinks you need a revolutionary idea to launch a SaaS. That's wrong. My first day wasn't spent looking for the idea of the century, but finding the smallest possible problem I could solve. I forbade myself from thinking about complex projects. My mantra was, boring but useful. I spent hours on forums like Reddit, on niche Facebook groups, not to find business ideas, but to listen to complaints. I was looking for small, recurring frustrations. And I found it. In a community of content creators, one complaint kept coming up: a lack of inspiration for original post formats. They were going in circles. Bingo. My SaaS wouldn't be the next Facebook. It would be a simple content idea generator, but ultra-specific to a niche. To validate this, I used an AI. I described the problem to it and asked it to generate 50 questions potential users might ask themselves. Then, I anonymously posted the 3 best questions on the forum. The responses poured in. It wasn't market research, it was a weak signal, proof that the pain point was real. The idea was born, simple, targeted, validated in a few hours, not by a survey, but by observing natural behavior. Chapter 2, Day 2, The Invisible Architect. The next day was the big leap, choosing the tools. The blank page dread. I chose a well-known no-code platform, Bubble, not because it's the best, but because its community is huge. My first action wasn't to drag and drop buttons. That's the trap. I opened a simple text document and talked to an AI as if it were my technical co-founder. I told it, I want to build an application where a user enters their industry and in return receives a list of post ideas. Describe to me, step by step, the database structure I'll need. The AI responded with disarming clarity. It talked about a users table, a requests table, a generated ideas table. It even suggested the fields to include in each table. It wasn't code. It was pure logic, an architect's blueprint. I spent the whole day building the skeleton in Bubble, not the visible interface, but the invisible foundation. Every click was guided by the plan the AI had helped me conceive. By the end of the day, my application was ugly, empty, but its structure was sound and logical. The AI hadn't coded for me, it had been my mentor, my system architect. Chapter 3, Day 3, The Beating Heart. This was the most exciting and terrifying day. The moment to plug in the application's brain, artificial intelligence. I was going to use the GPT 3.5 API. Until now, everything was theoretical. This is where things became concrete. Configuring an API in a no-code tool can seem intimidating, but it's like plugging something into an outlet. You just need to find the right connector. I followed tutorials and asked the AI itself to explain the concepts of authentication and endpoints in simple terms. The most crucial part was creating the prompt, the instruction my application would send to the AI. That took hours. I didn't just want to give me ideas. I refined a detailed prompt, acting as a virtual creative director. I gave it a role, a tone, constraints, examples of what to do and what not to do. Then, the moment of truth. I created a simple test page with an input field and a button. I typed artisan bakery, clicked generate, and waited. The 3 loading dots seemed to spin forever. And then, a list of ideas appeared. 5 types of bread your customers don't know about, behind the scenes of sourdough preparation, interview with this week's customer. It worked. The heart of my SaaS was beating. It was no longer an empty shell, it was an entity capable of thinking. Chapter 4, Day 4, The Art of Illusion. My application worked, but it looked like a 90s Excel spreadsheet. The user experience was non-existent. However, trust comes through design. Not being a designer, I again delegated to the AI. For the logo, I used Midjourney. I spent an hour describing a simple, modern concept related to ideas. I generated dozens of variations until I found one I liked. For the color palette and typography, I used online tools that generate harmonious combinations. But the AI's greatest help was with microcopy, the text on buttons, instructions, error messages. I asked an AI to rewrite every piece of text to be clearer, more encouraging, more human. Send became generate magic. Error became oops, let's try again. These are details, but they transform a cold interface into a welcoming experience. By the end of the day, without any design skills, my application looked professional. It was the art of illusion. The AI allowed me to create a credible facade that belied the one-man effort behind it. Chapter 5, Day 5, The Wall. And then, everything fell apart. The 5th day was the day of doubt. While trying to add a simple feature to save favorite ideas, I broke something in the database. New ideas no longer displayed. Panic set in. This is the moment when, normally, a developer opens their code, reads the error logs, and understands. I had no code to read. I had visual workflows, boxes, and arrows that no longer worked. I spent hours trying to undo, without success. Discouragement was total. I told myself this was the limit of no code, that without technical mastery, I was stuck at the first real problem. I was on the verge of giving up everything. I felt like an imposter. But that wasn't all. In addition to this bug, the AI was starting to give increasingly generic answers, losing the specificity that made it so powerful. The heart of my application seemed to weaken. It was a dual failure, structure and intelligence. The end of the project seemed inevitable. Chapter 6, Day 6, The Conversation. At rock bottom, I tried one last thing. I took screenshots of my no-code workflows, where I thought the error lay, and showed them to an AI capable of analyzing images. I described the problem to it as I would to a developer friend. When I click here, this data doesn't seem to be sent there. Here's how I configured the workflow. Do you see a logical error? Its response was an eye-opener. It didn't spot the bug, but it asked me the right questions. Did you check that the data privacy policy allows this user to view this information? That was it. A simple checkbox, forgotten in the labyrinth of settings. The bug was resolved. For the problem of answer quality, I did the same. I showed the AI my initial prompt and examples of bad answers. Together, we refined it, added constraints, and made the logic more complex. That day, I understood that AI wasn't a mere executor. It was a debugging partner, a colleague with whom I could have a technical conversation without speaking the same language. I had transformed my monologue into a dialogue. Chapter 7, Day 7, The Silent Launch and the Real Discovery. On the last day, the application was functional, well-designed, and robust. I didn't do a big launch. No marketing campaign. I simply posted a message in the community where I had found the idea. I didn't say here's my new SaaS. I said, hey everyone, I've tinkered together a little tool to help us with writer's block. It's free, let me know what you think. And I shared the link. The first feedback came within minutes. Wow, this is exactly what I needed, simple and super effective. Seeing real people use and enjoy something I had created with my own hands, or rather, with my own mind, was an indescribable feeling. But the real discovery of that week wasn't the application itself. The real secret method isn't a tool or a prompt. It's a paradigm shift. I realized that the most important skill today is no longer knowing how to code, but knowing how to think. Knowing how to break down a complex problem into small logical steps. Knowing how to ask the right questions. Knowing how to dialogue with an intelligence that isn't human, but that is a formidable lever for our own capabilities. This project taught me that the technical barriers I believed were insurmountable had become mere details. Creativity, vision, and the ability to solve a problem have once again become the only things that truly matter. Code is becoming a secondary language. The primary language is that of intent. And that, everyone can learn. So there you have it, the story of this wild week. This SaaS didn't change the world, but it changed mine. It proved to me that the inability to code is no longer an excuse not to create. AI isn't here to replace us, it's here to augment us, to become the technical co-founder we never had. If you have an idea lying dormant within you because of this barrier, I hope my story gives you the spark you were missing. Share with someone who wants to get started. Don't forget to subscribe.